One upgrade just changed the entire Formula One grid, and almost nobody understands why. Ferrari built the fastest car in Miami. Fastest lap, full control, everything looked perfect. But somehow, Red Bull, a team that was struggling just one race ago, came back and closed the gap to less than 3/10. That should not be possible. And here's the part that makes this even more shocking. The thing everyone is calling Macarena 2.0 is not the real advantage. Because what Red Bull is doing right now, Ferrari can see it, measure it, study it, and still not copy it. Not this season. Not even next season. And once you understand why, you'll see this championship in a completely different way. Subscribe now, because the answer only makes sense at the very end. Ferrari didn't just arrive fast in Miami, they arrived prepared. Weeks of development, a completely reworked package, and one very clear objective: take control of the weekend from the very first lap. And for a moment, it worked exactly like that. Leclerc goes out, delivers a 1 minute 29.310, and suddenly Ferrari is leading the session. Clean lap. Strong sectors. No drama. It looks like dominance. But here's where it starts to feel different. Because if you look closer, Ferrari's advantage isn't overwhelming. It's precise. It's controlled. Almost like everything is optimized for that one perfect moment, that one lap. And that's important. Because Formula One is not won in one lap. Now imagine this like tuning a musical instrument. Ferrari has tuned every string perfectly for a single note. And when they hit it, it sounds flawless. But what happens when the song changes? That's the question nobody answered after that lap. And this is where the Macarena 2.0 enters the conversation. On the surface, it's simple. A rear wing system that gives more straight-line speed, especially in sections like Sector 2 in Miami, where long straights reward efficiency. The data even hinted that it was already working during that session, giving Ferrari an edge exactly where it matters most. So naturally, everyone assumes, this is the breakthrough. This is the thing others will try to copy. But here's what most people missed. That wing doesn't work alone. It depends on the front wing, the floor, the airflow, even the balance of the car at high speed. Remove one piece, or fail to match it perfectly, and the whole system becomes unstable. Not slower, dangerous. And that changes everything. Because now copying it isn't just about building a similar part. It's about rebuilding the entire philosophy of the car around it. And that's where Ferrari might have made a very bold move, or a very risky one. Because if your performance depends on everything working perfectly together, then the moment something shifts, temperature, track grip, race conditions, the advantage can disappear just as fast as it appeared. And there's one more detail that makes this even more uncomfortable. Ferrari looks strong in clean air. In a controlled session. In a single practice window. But they haven't proven yet that this system holds under pressure. Wheel to wheel. Dirty air. Strategy chaos. And that's exactly where the real test begins. Because while Ferrari was showing what their car can do, Red Bull was quietly discovering what their car can survive. And those are not the same thing. And this is where things start to shift from impressive to dangerous. Because while Ferrari was chasing perfection, Red Bull was solving a completely different problem. Not how to be the fastest car. How to be the most usable one. Now think about that for a second. In the first races of the season, Verstappen wasn't just slower, he was fighting the car. The balance was unpredictable, the rear unstable, the whole thing felt like it could snap at any moment. Finishing races in those conditions wasn't about speed, it was about survival. But in Miami, something changed. Not dramatically on the surface. No flashy headline. No obvious visual trick. Just one radio message that said everything: the car responds. And that's where this becomes a completely different story. Because when a driver goes from managing chaos to controlling the car, performance doesn't improve step by step. It explodes. But here's what most people didn't notice. That improvement didn't come from one single upgrade. It came from multiple pieces finally working together. New side pods, changes to the floor, adjustments to how the air flows around the car, even how energy is delivered under the new regulations, all aligned in one direction. Individually, none of those parts sound revolutionary. Together, they change everything. Imagine trying to balance on a chair with one leg shorter than the others. You can adjust your position, compensate, struggle, but it will never feel stable. Now fix that one leg, and suddenly you're not just balanced, you're comfortable. That's what Red Bull did. They didn't just add performance. They removed instability. And this is where Ferrari should start to worry. Because a car that is easy to drive unlocks something you can't measure on a data sheet: confidence. Confidence to brake later. Confidence to carry more speed through corners. Confidence to push lap after lap without fear of losing the rear. And when that confidence comes back to a driver like Verstappen, The gap you saw on paper, those 0.3, stops being a limit. It becomes a starting point. But here's the deeper issue. Red Bull achieved this without fully maximizing their package yet. This was just the first session. Limited data, new parts, new behavior. And still, they jumped from the middle of the field straight into second place in a single session. That kind of progression is not normal. It means there's more potential still hidden. And this is where the tension really builds. Because Ferrari already looks close to their peak. The car is sharp, optimized, delivering results immediately. Red Bull looks like it just woke up. And if that's true, then what happens when they fully understand this version of the car? What happens when they refine it, adjust it, push it further? That's the question nobody in the paddock is comfortable answering right now. Because the moment Red Bull combines stability with full performance, the fight we thought we were watching completely changes. And now the reaction begins, and this is where the pressure inside the paddock starts to build. Because teams don't just look at lap times, they look at patterns. And the pattern coming out of Miami is unsettling. Ferrari leads the session. Strong, clean, predictable. Exactly what you expect from a team that executed their plan perfectly. But Red Bull jumps from the back of the fight, straight into second place, ahead of both Mercedes, a team that had been dominating the start of the season. That kind of shift forces everyone to ask the same question. What did we miss? Mercedes, for example, didn't just fall behind, they dropped almost 0.8 from the lead. That's not a small setup issue. That's a fundamental mismatch with the new regulations and how the car generates performance. And when a team like Mercedes suddenly looks lost, it creates something very dangerous for the rest. Uncertainty. Because now no one knows which direction is actually correct. McLaren sits somewhere in the middle. Fast, but not fully understood. Even their own driver admitted they still haven't figured the car out completely after that session. And that tells you something important. This isn't just about upgrades anymore. It's about interpretation. Each team is trying to solve the same puzzle, but they're using completely different approaches. Ferrari believes in precision. Build a system that delivers maximum performance when everything aligns. Red Bull believes in adaptability. Build a car that works even when things aren't perfect. Mercedes was relying on a structure that no longer gives them the same advantage. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because when teams start doubting their direction, development slows down. Decisions become cautious. Risks disappear. But Red Bull? They've already taken the risk. They changed the car. They fixed the instability. And now they have something the others don't? Clarity. And that clarity is already affecting how drivers react. Leclerc sounds confident, focused on performance, talking about a turning point for Ferrari. Hamilton feels the difference, especially in high-speed sections, which means the car is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Everything is working. But on the other side, Verstappen's tone is different. Less frustration. More control. Still critical of the rules, still not fully satisfied, but now there's something new underneath all of that. Belief. And belief in Formula One is dangerous. Because once a driver believes the car will respond, they start asking more from it. And the team starts pushing harder to unlock more. Now connect all of this. Ferrari has performance. Red Bull has momentum. Mercedes has questions. McLaren has uncertainty. And the championship suddenly feels wide open, but not in the way people expected. Because this is no longer about who built the fastest car. It's about who understands their car well enough to keep evolving it. And that leads to a much bigger consequence that almost nobody is talking about yet. What happens when Red Bull starts developing from a stable base, while others are still trying to understand theirs? Because if that process has already started, then Miami wasn't just a competitive session. It was the moment the balance of power quietly began to shift. And this is the point where everything stops being about upgrades, and starts being about consequences. Because once a team finds stability, real stability, not just a good session, not just a perfect lap, everything around that car begins to change. Strategy changes. Driver behavior changes. Development speed changes. And most importantly, pressure shifts. Now think about what Ferrari is dealing with. They built a car that is incredibly precise. Every element working together, every gain carefully engineered, every advantage dependent on perfect conditions. When it works, it looks unbeatable. But here's the hidden cost. Precision leaves very little room for error. So the moment something moves outside that perfect window, tire temperature, dirty air, unexpected race situations, the performance can drop faster than expected. And that's not a weakness you see on a timing screen. That's a weakness you feel on Sunday. Meanwhile, Red Bull is building something completely different. Not a perfect car. A flexible one. A car that can handle imperfection. And this is where things become almost impossible to copy. Because flexibility doesn't come from one part. It doesn't come from a wing, or a floor, or a visible upgrade. It comes from how every single system inside the car talks to each other. Aerodynamics, suspension, energy deployment, balance, all working together in a way that allows the driver to adapt in real time. And here's the key detail. That kind of system cannot be reverse engineered from the outside. You can copy shapes. You can copy concepts. But you cannot copy understanding. And Red Bull understands their car again. Now imagine two drivers entering the same corner. One knows that if they push just a little too much, the rear might step out, the balance might break, the lap might be lost. The other knows the car will catch them. That driver always goes faster. Not because the car is faster on paper, but because the limit feels safer. And that difference grows lap after lap, corner after corner, race after race. This is why what happened in Miami goes far beyond one session result. Because if Red Bull has truly rebuilt that trust between driver and machine, then every future upgrade becomes more powerful. Every change becomes easier to extract performance from. While other teams are still trying to figure out where their limit even is. And this leads to the moment that changes everything. Because championships are not won by the car that is fastest once. They are won by the car that improves faster than everyone else. Ferrari may have reached a peak in Miami. Red Bull may have just found their foundation. And if that's true, then what looks like a small gap today is actually the beginning of something much bigger.